supply chains. Let's talk a little bit about them. They have been stretched or even destroyed due to the flooding, but they were stretched even beforehand. So what needs to be done there? David, you want to start us off?
So I think first off, we have to have a serious conversation about interprovincial
Right.
trade barriers, sorry. And most people don't know how ridiculous this can get. And I'll give you a real example. An example of a truck carrying goods from PEI through to, let's say, Manitoba would have to have different medical kits in their cabin for each province. Depending on the province and the payload, the width of the tires could be in violation with whatever the code is. All of those things make it incredibly difficult to move goods across provincial boundaries.
Right.
And none of those barriers should exist. We're a country. We should have free trade between our provinces. That I think is something. I don't know what the latest polling is, but I think it's well over 90%
Sure.
say that that's a no-brainer. And so, if we're talking about supply chains, we're talking about reshoring, all of those very valid discussions. We also have to talk about how we move things across the country.
Colin, reshoring, onshoring, interprovincial, where do you want to go on this topic?
Well, I couldn't agree more with David. There's a Senate report from a couple of years back, and they said that this problem that we have in Canada that makes it so hard to get goods from one part of the country to another for businesses to work together, it costs our economy upwards of $130 billion a year. It is a massive, massive problem. There's all kinds of anecdotes like the one that David just mentioned. And for perspective, I think it was about a year ago, the Prime Minister said he wanted to stimulate the economy to get it going again because of COVID, and he was going to spend $100 billion. So that's going out, racking up debt. Taxpayers have to pay for the debt, the interest costs, and so forth. You could get a larger stimulus effect by just simply getting rid of all these really bad rules that make it hard for businesses and consumers to do business with each other in different parts of the country. There's so many examples. One I heard about in that Senate report was a brewery company in Nova Scotia. They wanted to start selling beer into Newfoundland. But at the time, Newfoundland had a different set of rules around the size of bottles. So they eventually threw up their hands and they said, well, we'll just try and sell our product in the States instead. So, it's examples like that. Just get rid of all this red tape, make it a priority. You could create lots of economic growth. That would help BC's economy, the rest of the country, as we try and rebuild, not just from the floods in BC, but from COVID and other challenges.
Yeah, go ahead, David, and I've got a supplementary, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, it really is as simple as, if it's good enough for thee, it's good enough for me. Mm-hmm. If it passes code in PEI, it's good enough anywhere else in Canada. If it's good enough for the folks in British Columbia, it's good enough for the folks in Ontario. And so it really is summed up in one line. And when you say that to most people, they don't even realize the problem exists.
No, and I guess the point I was going to make was that there's no real relevant health or safety reason for a lot of this red tape. It's just different historical or cultural context, or just different people making rules. Human beings in Nova Scotia making one rule, human beings in Newfoundland making another rule. Is that Colin? Does that make sense? How this happened?
I think for the most part you're right, Tony. I think there may be some cases where governments try to protect their industry and keep it safe from another business in another province competing. But at the end of the day, it benefits consumers if we have this free flow of trade of goods and products and services between the country. It makes it much easier. We should be doing that instead of like we talked about. Some companies look at the U.S. because it's easier to do business down there than it might be with another province. That doesn't make any sense in this day and age.
Yeah. Do you see any? We've got about 40 seconds left. David or Colin, jump in. Is there any movement with the federal government on this?
I was a part of the Canadian Free Trade's Reconciliatory Board. I wish I had more positive things to say. They mean well, but it's very much tinkering at the margins. There are some folks in Conservative caucus who know that this is a problem and would want to be much more aggressive on it. But other than that, the outlook is not positive.